Hey guys, welcome to the first ever podcast episode of the Strong Minded podcast. I'm super excited today to have Bill Ranshaw, who is a porn addiction recovery coach, on with us today. How are you doing, Bill? Welcome to the show.
Joe, I am fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be on your very first ever. We've been in contact for a while now, chatting back and forth. I've been excited to see your growth and everything that you're doing. I'm a fan. So it's an honor to be on, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, we've sort of known each other for a little while now, through sort of the men's communities that we've sort of been a part of, and I think due to my own kind of growth, and obviously porn and masturbation is a huge topic within men's work, and something that that I've been navigating recently as well, which we're going to get into a bit further. So yeah, I wanted to get you on really because I think that what we're going to talk about today is going to
I lost you.
Oh. So Bill, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, what got you into porn addiction recovery coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. It's, a lot, I connect so much with the men that I see in your groups and that you coach. I grew up a really shy kid. I was skinny. People would come over to the house. I would hide in closets. I would hide behind furniture. I would do everything possible to not interact with people. And, that carried with me all throughout school. And I think so many of the guys, that you and I both reach have that experience. And we go into school being shy, nerdy, whatever it is. I also had the counter effect where I had a sister who was extremely popular, very well known. I was known as her brother. I wasn't known as Bill. And so I had all these things going, and, I would have married the first girl that ever would have talked to me at any point in time. I would have dated any girl that would have ever talked to me. Never had the motivation to talk. Too scared for anything, you name it. And, I found porn at around the age of 10 or 11, could have been 9. I don't know. I usually say 10 or 11, and that's kind of the age that a lot of men do it. And it carries through us, and we can get into that in a bit, like how it affects us during our teen years and what it's actually doing to our brain that we're not aware of. But I didn't have sex till I was 19. Some people might say, oh, that's early. And other people like, holy cow, that's so late. But for me, it was a horrible experience. It was some random girl that we picked up at a bar. We were out with my buddies, and we went back to her place. Everybody was drunk. They were passed out, and she and I went at it. And it was just awkward. It was weird. I didn't orgasm by far. And it was all done like, wow, that was it? Like, what? Like, wow. Like, I can't believe I've been waiting for that forever. That was horrible. And, I thought it was a fluke. And, first times being weird for everybody. Well, going on into my 20s and through the remaining 20 years, it actually showed up everywhere in my life. And anytime I had sex for like the next 20 years, I was never able to orgasm from sex. Jokingly, I say I was able to orgasm from sex on one hand. I can count how many times. And I always like, what is it? Is it just me? And then so building confidence, I'm going to back up a little bit, building the confidence in my early 20s, and I went to college. I started working out. So fitness became a priority, as it does for a lot of young men, especially in their 20s. And I started gaining attention of girls because of my physical look. And I also was so shy. I was living in Arizona here in the United States. And it's kind of known as a cowboy state, country western and all that. And so I picked up country dancing, and I ended up teaching country dance. I taught myself, but it was all a ruse to not actually have to talk to a girl. I would just get really good at it, and then girls would come up to me and want to dance with me. So I had all these ways of finding girls in that aspect. It was also the same time that the internet came out, or it was just emerging. And so it was like a new frontier of a way to meet women. And I was being so shy, I kind of opened up on the internet, and I found like dating sites, chat rooms, and things like that, where my quest for hooking up became like my number one goal. And through all of this, it was still in porn and masturbation, every day, every couple of days. And we can get into like what addiction means later, if that makes sense. But my porn addiction turned into a sex addiction. And so through my 20s and 30s, my life, and this is where a lot of guys say, well, it doesn't sound like a problem to me. It sounds pretty awesome. I had all these wild and crazy sex experiences over the next 20 years of like group sex, like 4 or 5 women at one time, women naked around a swimming pool, jerking off for them, and name it, just weird, wild, crazy stuff. And I kind of built my identity around that. I grew up this shy kid, and now I had all these adventures. I started introducing these women to friends of mine because they didn't believe it. And so all of a sudden, like, my friends are hooking up with all these chicks. And it was just like Bill was the guy. He could hook up with anybody, and he was having sex. Well, underlying it, I was never able to orgasm. I don't know what I was chasing, whether it was validation or whatever it might be. And it was just a vicious cycle that kept happening over and over. And where a lot of guys don't see the challenge in their 20s and 30s, you're still able to function pretty well. I didn't realize, again, this whole time what was going on in my brain. And once I hit my late 30s and multiple women throughout my life, thank God I never got a disease. That's one thing that I'm so happy for. And I started deciding, like, is this all that there is? I was becoming numb to life. My 30s, I was having a lot of fun, but numb. I also had some loss in my life. I lost my father in my 20s, my mom from a heart attack. In my 30s, I had a godson who was 7 who passed away from leukemia. So I had all these things that I was getting numb to and just not really enjoying life. I didn't enjoy hobbies. Work, I was pretty good at. I never really enjoyed work. I was always job skipping. I was doing so many different things. And I started to say, maybe I'll start dating women. And this is when I noticed it, as I started actually falling for women. Like, sex just felt weird with somebody that I actually liked. I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Now, sexual dysfunction was sitting in, sexual arousal, all these type of things that I'd never had challenges with before. I was able to get erections, even though I couldn't orgasm. Now I'm with a girl that I like. Well, then the girls started thinking it was a problem with them. And I thought, God, I didn't even know it was wrong. It wasn't until my early 40s. I'll preface that now. I'll be 50 this year. I'm 49 right now. That in my early 40s, a friend of mine reached, I shared this privately with him. And he said to me, do you watch porn? I said, fuck yeah, I watch porn. Like, everybody watches porn. Porn is healthy. I have a video on it that talks about that. And so he says, well, just consider that that's causing a lot of problems in your life and a lot of this disconnect. I said, whatever, man. And so I moved, I went on, but that's all I needed to hear, because it was over the next couple of years, whenever this problem would come up, I just kept hearing his voice was just consider it was a problem. And so I started doing the research around it. And then I realized that this does have a lot to do with it. And it got to the point where I was so numb and not feeling anything. I'd lost a relationship. A girl I was with thought I was cheating on her and all these things because I didn't want to have sex. I was making up excuses why not to have sex with her. And so I finally came to the conclusion that porn was never going to allow me to have the future I wanted. And whether that was true or not, I don't know, but that was a powerful enough association that I made to it that I was able to stop. And so 4 years ago was this past weekend was my 4-year anniversary of stopping porn and masturbation. And so that's the brief story, and I'll let you jump in and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. Wow. Such a powerful story. I think it will resonate with so many because, sex is such a big part of our life that often isn't talked about so much. Obviously, it's talked about quite a lot within men's communities, but I don't think in as much depth as what you've just covered. I can definitely resonate with a lot of it myself. I think that, you know, as a 28-year-old guy, I don't know if things have changed so much from when you were in your 20s, but you know, there's a lot of pressure on us to fulfill that ego, to compete with other guys, and sort of our masculinity in a way is tied to our ability to perform. So for me, like, I didn't lose my virginity until I was like about 19, which I always kind of felt a little bit ashamed about. And there were several kind of occasions, sexual encounters I had where I couldn't get it up. And I think, like, we haven't talked too much. Well, you talked a little bit about it, but in terms of you know, putting up that mask to the world of who I am, which was, you know, externally someone who was very confident in themselves, someone who was like sporty, someone who was fairly popular, but deep inside was a little boy who was very, very wounded and in a lot of pain. And I think when I had to be sexual, it was kind of like I had to let down that armor, let down that guard, and that wasn't something that I was really used to doing. So I guess I wanted to ask you in terms of what was the breaking point for you, because for me, it took pretty much a mental breakdown for me to start working and actually on healing that little boy, that inner boy within me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the physical ramification that got me going to was the sexual dysfunction and the lack of sexual arousal and libido inside of a relationship with somebody I liked. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to have a relationship. And I'll back that up. Like, I was the guy who never wanted to have a relationship. I could hook up anytime I wanted. Why would I want to be with one person? So, you know, porn and sex addiction, like transactionalized relationships with women. It's like, why would I ever that? Like, what are they really providing in a relationship? And so I kind of had this dichotomy of, I had experienced intimacy with a woman in my early 40s that I really enjoyed that, but the sex wasn't connected to it. I'm like, this is just weird. And so every time I got in a relationship that was happening, I realized I want this intimacy. I want to be with somebody that's special. I've had, you know, hundreds, thousands. I don't want to put numbers on how many, but I want to be with one person. I've experienced that. And I realized porn was never going to have that. So I had to change that behavior. But in doing that, just as you mentioned, there's so much more to it. And the groups that I'm in, like no FAP groups, no PMO, semen retention, all these kind of groups, people just want to power through it and expect changes to happen. It will happen. You can do this on your own, but it took me years and decades. And it went back to understanding why porn, just like somebody, why alcohol, why cocaine, why meth, you know, all these kind of things. Why is this an addiction? And understanding that, you know, a lot of men that I talk to are addicted, meaning they can watch, you know, hours upon hours a day and binge and binge and binge, which is one form of the addiction. But the other form, which might be like me or you or somebody else, where it's every day over a couple of days, but over 20, 30 years of drip, 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 pun intended, it's causing an issue. And where I learned was going back to my childhood and my teens and that shyness and that kid, where I grew up with the self-belief of I'm not good enough and I don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so porn and sex turned into a mask and a coping mechanism and a retreat for all those type of things. And I was able to find ways to hook up with women that didn't affect my ego. And I can tell, like on the internet, it was really easy. I ended up reaching out to women and telling them this was just the shtick that I had, was saying, I've got a fetish if you're interested in hearing about it. If a woman's interested, I tell her. If not, great, I end the conversation. And she says, yeah, tell me what it is. I would say, you know, I enjoy, you know, masturbating in front of a woman who's sitting there across the room watching me. And that was something I trialed and errored, because a woman like that was non-threatening to her, might spark arousal, and it got me in a room with a woman. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, once I start jerking off, I'm having sex with the girl. So it was this weird little thing that developed. But if for my own ego, as you talked about, if a woman didn't like what I was approaching her with, I could say she didn't like my little fetish. She didn't like me. So I was able to separate the two. So I was at safe without having to be rejected. She was rejecting my proposition, not me. And so and kind of went into the world. That's what hookups were. That's what it always was. It's like I never had to worry about being vulnerable. And your channel originally started as that. And I resonated with that. When my life changed is when I shared my story with men and other men that were close to me. I said, this is something's going on in my life. I think porn is the issue and all these problems. Men became so connected. My friends became connected to me like, wow, that makes sense. I've dealt with this in my own life. I thought I was the only one was the thing they'd say. We all think that, even though it's 99% of the population of men deal with this stuff. So I really started going back and learning the psychology of what was really going on. And this is why porn is so dangerous to young men is, and especially now, I grew up in the 80s watching porn where I had to seek out videotapes and Playboy magazines, satellite channels, looking through the scrambled satellite, all this stuff just to get a peek at a boob or something. And so, but now the frequency and the intensity and the availability of porn, it's ready at hand. And I tell parents, like your kids are not finding porn. Porn is finding your kids. And what it's doing to your brain is the natural progress of how men grow or people in general is you fumble through your puberty years and learning attraction through touch, through conversation, through other stimulus that attracts you and builds intimacy with a woman. Now, men, when we started around 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, our formidable years of intimacy and relationship building is just thrown out the window. It doesn't build. We build false cues to sexuality. And that's why so many men are coming out of their teens into their 20s with erectile dysfunction. They can't do anything because they haven't built the real cues to real women. Mm-hmm. And you've built a disconnect between that. And if you think about what's also going on scientifically in our brain, that's the years, our teen years, is when our limbic system in our brain is creating or is learning. And the limbic system is the part of the brain where we learn about how to deal with stress and anxiety, depression, anxiousness, happiness, where all of our emotions, we get to deal with that. And all these years with these negative emotions, we're jerking off every day to porn. There's a correlation being built into our brain that will later on in our life start seeking that out. So if you're in your 20s and 30s and you realize everything's going good and all of a sudden, boom, you're triggered to go watch porn, it's going to trigger an anxiety or depression because your brain knows the outcome of anxiety and depression and fear, which is ejaculation and that big high and that big rush. And so it also becomes our safe place. If we feel that somewhere else in our life, immediately we're triggered to go to that. And triggers can happen in so many different ways. It could be time of day, it could be weather, it could be visual, a conversation. If we feel demoralized, anything like that, all these triggers come up. And so if you want to rid yourself of the porn, you have to put something into place to learn how to empower yourself and powerfully cope and deal with anxiety and stress and fear and all these things in our life. Otherwise, we're just going to be triggered right back to it because short term, it's going to take it away from us. It'll give us a little bit of alleviation.
Yeah. I love the way that you break it down and you take it to a deeper level than what I've seen from the majority of people that talk about this topic. Obviously, we'll get into this a bit further in terms of other addictions and protective mechanisms and getting dependent on other stuff. I just wanted to kind of talk quickly about like my experience and how that resonated with me. So, depression probably set in for me when I was around the age of like 14 or 15. I was having a pretty difficult time of it at home. And school wasn't as good. You know, I went from being that popular kid to being a lot less popular. One of my friends from childhood, like a really good friend, best friend, who kind of went on family holidays with me, family vacations, kind of distanced himself away from me at that point, and that kind of sense of identity, of confidence, came from being popular, being that guy that everyone kind of looked up to and stuff like that. And when that was gone, when that was away from me, I became very depressed, and porn and masturbation kind of filled that void, filled that hole.
When did you start,
me.
Joe? When did you start watching porn? Was it
So
that
I
age or
started.
early?
I started watching quite late because, like, for me, sex was always this very sacred thing, and the act of actually watching porn and watching other people, you know, get it on was, in some sort of way, felt very wrong and very shameful to me.
Right.
So, you know, that only started at that kind of age, 14, 15, where I was kind of rebelling against my conditioning, I guess, and rebelling.
Well, let me
against
ask you this. I know you're in the middle of your story and I don't want to interrupt, but I'm trying to understand, and maybe just the psychology is, sex was this very sacred thing, and porn didn't fulfill that sacredness. In fact, it was anti-sacred. But then when you started watching it due to your friend leaving as kind of as a trigger, did that start building shame then at that point in time? Because now you're giving into this thing that you felt was anti-sacred, and now you're a part of it. And now I could see where that could possibly be shameful.
I think it was me shutting down my pain. Because I didn't want to confront my best friend. Like, that confrontation was too scary for me. And that, I guess, that goes back to some of the stuff in my childhood, which I'm not going to go into right now. At some point I will, but yeah, I think that disconnect from my experience, from like that, from what was actually real for me, you know, porn filled that place and became that shameful thing. So my association, I guess, that subconscious association, was that sex equals shame, sex equals pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people will retreat to that, and it anchors at that point in time. And as you can see, porn is already building a negative association towards, you know, sex and relationship and intimacy at that age, and it manifests in so many different ways in our teen years. And you know, as we get older, that's the bitch of it, is we can deal with it, not know about it or think about it. I'm so thankful that so many men are waking up to it at an earlier age. But if you don't do anything about it, it's like smoking. You know, you're not going to realize it until you're 40, 50 years old, of what the hell is going on in my life. This is such a thing that's hard to shake. And you mentioned identity earlier. And that's a big piece of it, because the big piece, and I had one of my clients actually share when I first started this, the question I used to ask men is like, what are you most afraid of if you don't stop watching porn? And most men can rattle that stuff off right away. Like, I'll never have a relationship. I won't do good at work. I'm going to be numb. I'm going to be happy. And then, so they can say all those things and they know it. It's not enough to scare them to stop it, because internally, they've already accepted those things. They've already accepted the pain, and that's the future that they're going to have. But then I turn around and I'll ask somebody, what are you most afraid of if you do stop watching porn? And the immediate response is, well, I'm not afraid of anything. Think about it some more. What are you afraid of? And one of my clients brought this on early, and it was very profound for me. He said, he was really honest. He said, I'm afraid I'll lose my identity. And I was like, wow, that was so profound. And it was so true, because I looked upon my own life, and going back, I had built this identity around sex, and I could do all this. And then this is who I was. This is why people came to me. And if I wanted to give up this life, I was going to have to give that up. And that's very powerful. I was going to have to give up that safe space, that thing that I knew, my security blanket, all these things that wrapped around it, that I knew I had to give that up. When I changed the focus, though, to what do I get to gain from this? And most people want to focus, okay, I'm getting higher testosterone, I can go to the gym, I can work out and all that kind of stuff. That is so low level as to what you get to gain when you stop. Is I focused on the connection that I was going to have, because it completely eradicated my ability to connect with people. And that's why that happened. So I was able to actually define and create the identity that I wanted, which was so powerful. It was, I wanted to create the identity of a very powerful, masculine, loving, compassionate man with gratitude, with an amazing woman in my life who I could share with, we could grow together and conquer the world. I mean, it was so empowering when I realized I could do this. Like, I don't want to be the guy who hooks up fucking 5 times a week with 3 girls at a time. Like, that was doing nothing for me. It got me nowhere, except for a lot of, guys wanting to ask questions about it. So when I was able to redirect to the identity I wanted to build and focus on connecting with other people, things just started happening. And that was when I realized, again, porn has no hand in that. No pun intended, maybe.
Sorry, I was a bit slow there. I was thinking of the next question I was going to ask. Yeah, I mean, again, like, I think there's so much focus on the advantages of giving up porn and masturbation. And I think a lot of it really misses the mark, like misses the point, because as you say, like, yes, you're going to increase your testosterone, right? But the more you increase your testosterone, the more you're going to want to jerk off, the more you're going to want to release, right? And we'll come back into this a bit more as well, because you probably know more about this than I do. But obviously, so my New Year's resolution was basically to quit porn and masturbation, right? And I've already relapsed a couple of times. I'm on I don't know how many day streak, but it's probably about 2 weeks. But what I've noticed is, like, the more you go without something and the more powerful you feel, the more you want it. And I guess that is part of the withdrawal process. But every time that you relapse, you create that feeling within you that you're not adequate, you're not capable of doing this hard thing that you're trying to achieve. And that, just keeps that shame cycle repeating and repeating. So I think it's potentially dangerous when people are just kind of talking about quitting porn and masturbation at that very shallow surface level of, oh yeah, it's going to help you to feel more attractive and more confident and get more testosterone, without, going into that deeper layers. A lot of people, a lot of men are going to feel very, very ashamed of themselves when they start relapsing.
Well, yeah, that's a great point, Joe, because there's a couple of things that go on with that. Is so many men, like I said, they're so focused on, because a lot of men have a different experience than me. I was able to turn that energy into actually hooking up with women. Most guys don't have that experience. Most guys find it very hard to meet women and hook up into those type of things. But stopping porn, their motivation is to actually go out and have sex, which in turn is just another mask for what they're trying to cover up. So it's going to die from one another. Okay, great. You stop porn, you start hooking up, you start getting physically fit. You're still not dealing with those issues underneath, and you're just going to leapfrog these different things. And I'll back that up with my stories. Once I quit porn, I thought, great, I'm cured, because I did start noticing certain things in my life, like connections and connecting with people and interest and hobbies and energy levels. But for the first time in my life, I got addicted to substances. I was never a big drinker, but I was in a car accident. I got addicted to opioids. It took me about 8 months to get off of that. After opioids, I got addicted to cocaine because I was working so hard. I'd never done it before in my life until my mid 40s. And what the fuck? And so I realized, all right, now that porn's gone, some other evil is going to sneak in there, some other addiction to try to keep masking it for me to fall back in. And so that's when I had to go back and really deal with all those things. Now, a relapse, I look at a relapse as a great thing, though, and again, I'm all about creating a powerful association to anything. If you think, if you're disempowered with something, flip it around and how can you be empowered by it? And a relapse is a great magnifying glass for you to be able to examine, all right, I was doing well. I had certain systems in place. I relapsed. Now I can evaluate. Am I missing a system? Was I not following my system? Or was I not putting something powerful in its place, like a new system? So that's all a relapse is let me learn how to start coping as a mechanism. Let me evaluate that trigger that I hit. How can I deal with that trigger and be empowered, create a more powerful, empowered behavioral response from that trigger, as opposed to resulting to porn? And so if you can empower yourself with a relapse it's an extremely effective tool to really evaluate and be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, it's when you see it like that, and I guess that comes from probably quite a lot of personal development on your side, and particularly on my side as well, is that, when I face an obstacle, when I face a challenge, when I fail, I don't see it as, I failed, I'm a failure. I see it as, this is an opportunity for me to learn more about myself. And I think that's come from years of personal development. So I think for those that are sort of, NoFap is the gateway for personal development and stuff like that, is, I think it's a tool. It's an area to attack, like just as getting fit or improving your social skills or whatever it is, there's something deeper than that at the core of the issues and problems that you're having that is only manifested through porn and masturbation. So it's not, you go into this a lot in terms of, and what you were saying before, in terms of living an empowering life and focusing on what you really, really, truly want in your life. I think that's extremely powerful, because in my opinion, as long as you're trying to fulfill your ego, that's never going to be enough for you to escape your problems and your issues. It's got to be much, much deeper than that. It's got to be at a core level. And I think one of the main issues is that, as kids, we're taught to give up on our dreams. We're taught to play safe and to be realistic. And so for some people, their idea of what a dream life is to have a trophy girlfriend and to be everything that society tells them that they should be, rather than actually reconnecting with themselves, with their higher purpose in life, and becoming the most unique individual. Sorry, I'm just to let you know, I am my battery is on 14%, so we will have to wrap up fairly soon. But yeah, what I wanted to get into there was like, what advice would you give to someone who was thinking about giving up porn and masturbation, or is trying to, has failed? How would you advise them?
First of all, start examining your life, all the areas of your life where you feel like you're not succeeding and you don't think porn is related, you think it's completely unrelated, realize that it's related to that. And before you go, I do want to tell people, because people are like, well, why listen to Bill? Why should I care about Bill? Because he did this. Since I quit, it's been 4 years, but within the first 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, like I started excelling at work. I gave up my other addictions. I found true happiness. I found connection. I found peace. Every day I wake up just excited. I became financially independent. I gave up the concept of wanting and needing money. And when I did that, to really helping and connecting with people, money's now a byproduct. Most importantly, I've met the most amazing woman in my life after 40 some years of just being disconnected. I'm now engaged to a woman who is, she's an ex-model. She's gorgeous. I don't want that to be the focus, but she's the whole package. She's smart. She's intelligent. She's an entrepreneur. She makes her own money. She does all these things. So she and I are conquering the world together. Never would have had that with porn. So it's like a euphoria. So that's what's on the other side of this. But the advice moving forward is take a look at where it's at. Ego is a big piece that you mentioned, and learn how to train your ego. most of the time, ego, you know, I use the analogy, it's like your pet or a new dog is, most of the times your dog is your rampant dog running around the house chewing up the furniture. Train your ego to be subservient to you. Use your ego when it's going to empower you, not all these times when it's trying to make you play safe and do all that. Tell this, you know, sit down, shut the fuck up and sit in the corner. I've got this, you know, but there's times your ego you need. And also when you talked about, you know, personal development in itself, right, it can become an addiction. And the reason it becomes an addiction is because most people want to follow it. They want the, you know, the motivational videos and the motivational phrases and things like that. But again, they're not diving into the work. And you look at it like you're in a boat and all these things is you're taking in all this motivation, but yet you have all these holes in your boat where it's just sinking out. So you're never really gaining it. You have to start plugging that holes. Porn and masturbation is one of them. Food, nutrition, exercise, like where all these things that you're defeating and being disempowering to your body and your mind, media, social media, news, all these things are deficits to your life that when you bring in personal development, it's a hole in the boat where it just sucks right out. So personal development can help you find those holes. You have to start plugging them before you even really figure about the abundance in life that you want, because all that stuff just becomes a byproduct once you start fixing and focusing on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, like, I think when you start to realize that all of your problems are things that you've manifested from a core level of pain, and the only way to get out of that pain is to go through that pain, is, you know, that is the biggest realization in my life, because I think we're taught to live so externally. We're taught that, you know, to get the grades, we're taught to go to university, we're taught to get the partner, the house, and all of this, the social media, everything that you talk about is so external that we become familiar with just accepting and making excuses for all of the problems that are in our life, and assuming that they have an external cause. And once you realize that the cause is internal, and for me, it's about sort of when you take away the armor, when you take away these protective mechanisms, you're like, fuck, I'm in a lot of pain. Yeah. Right. And that's when you realize, and you're like, oh shit, like, yeah, I need to deal with this.
Well, you're on it. And you know, the key indicators that people can use is the second you feel anger towards someone, if you start hating someone, as you said, it has nothing to do with anybody else in the outside world, but those are indicators for you to take a look at yourself. Why am I angry at that person? Why am I deflecting? There's a mirror right there that I need to take a look at about something in my life that I'm blinded to, that I'm probably doing myself, and all these certain types of things. You know, I always tell people, because I know you're about to run short here, is start off, it sounds weird, start off with gratitude. I have a video on my website called Take the Compliment. I really understand the power behind gratitude, what it's doing to your brain. It does actual chemical, it builds oxytocin in your brain, which is a connective hormone, connects you to people. That's the first and best place to start, because you can give gratitude, it's free. You can receive gratitude. Most people don't receive gratitude at all in their lives. They dismiss it, they shun it, they push it away. You're demeaning your own self-worth when you do that. And you're also robbing somebody else of giving you that gratitude. So, you know, people are welcome to go to my website. Yeah, go to my YouTube channel and you know, go to yours. You coach all this stuff.
Bill, I'm so very grateful for this conversation. My battery is about to die. We will end it there. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us on this first ever podcast. I will leave some videos of Bill's at the end of this video for you to go and check out. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.